Hey, what's up you guys? My name's Allie and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, kind of just do more of a sit down video and talk about writing and talk about the book I wrote and the books, plural, I am writing several books at the same time, but we'll get into that. But I just want to talk about how I got into writing, my journey, what it's like to self-publish, if I think that self-publishing is the best way to go, all that kind of stuff. So let's get into it, I guess. First, I'll kind of talk about how I got into writing. As long as I can remember, I have loved stories of any kind, whether that's like books or movies, TV shows. I just love stories. I love hearing people tell stories. I love finding out about people's lives. I love like seeing a stranger on the street and thinking about what their life is like and the kind of person they might be. It's just like very fascinating to me. I'm a psych major, I have a counseling degree, so I'm like very interested in people and like how people think. And I think you have to be a little bit interested in people to be able to write. So I've always been interested in people, always been interested in stories. I always read like a fiend, like that was my favorite thing to do. I was that person that read the next Harry Potter book in like a day. I just loved reading, like that was my favorite thing. So as you can imagine, some of my role models really when I was growing up were authors. My favorite author of all time, Roald Dahl, he's like such an inspiration to me. And really all I ever wanted to be as a kid was an author. Like some people wanted to be astronauts or like a princess even or whatever. Like as a young kid, I wanted to write books. And as a kid too, as like a young kid, I would like kind of write things out. I would try to illustrate. Illustrations are not really my thing so much. And then, you know, as many people do, they kind of lose the creative side a little bit when you get into like junior high and high school, especially if you were an athlete like I was. You can kind of like push all that stuff to the side. But those are the types of things that really make me happy. And when I started grad school, I was living alone in a town where I didn't know anybody. My husband, then boyfriend, was in his senior year of college and like very busy. And I just had this time in the evenings and I just was like, now's the time. I've always wanted to write a book. I had tried several times to get something going but never could complete anything. Could never get farther than like a couple chapters before I just gave up, honestly. So when I was in grad school was the time that I was like, let's get this party started. Let's write this book. And I remember clear as day, I was home for Christmas break during my first year of grad school, and I was up in my room, and I was laying on my bed, and I was like, let's get to it. Like, let's think of an idea. Let's think of a book idea. And I kind of just laid there, and I like let my mind wander a little bit. I just kind of like started letting random thoughts come into my head, and I don't know how to describe that if that's not how your brain works. Like my brain, there's always like a million random ideas coming in and out of my head. Like I definitely am much more artsy than like scientific. So I just kind of was like laying there, letting these ideas come in my head. And I don't know why, but I had this vision of a young girl, like maybe like 8, you know, some random chick out in the woods. And there was like a pond in the woods, like this body of water. It's kind of like gross, you know, how water is in the woods. And she was alone. This little girl was like alone in the woods by the water. That's like the vision I saw in my head. And that's what started it all. And it's like so odd to think that that's how it started, but I remember clear as day that that's exactly how it began. So once I had that image of the girl by the water in the woods, I started like asking myself questions like, who is this girl? Why is she in the woods by herself? What's going to happen to her next? And I think that's what you have to do if you're writing a story, whether it's a poem even, or like short story or a novel. You have to ask yourself questions. And I think that's really cool because you're asking yourself questions that you don't even know the answer to yet. So my brain was like turning with all these questions, and I just got out, you know, a notebook and I started writing down everything that came to mind. That's kind of my process of writing. I'm not sure at all if that's how most people write. But I just kind of ask myself a series of questions, and that just leads me to what I write, I guess. I will say that I had come up with like a general outline of how the whole story would go. And then I just started writing. It's kind of odd, as I was writing, things just kind of naturally happened in the story. And that's also happening with the story that I'm writing now. And it's kind of like fun. Your characters almost take on a life of their own, and that's just like such a cool thing to have happen. So I would say pretty much like the whole middle chunk of my story, where all the details are and things like that, a lot of that I came up with as I was writing. I had not thought about all those different things. It's just like your characters are doing something, and then you ask yourself, okay, what happens next? And even the ending, there's a pretty big twist. I did not come up with that until pretty much I was writing it. I had the general idea for how it was going to end, and that did happen, but there are like some twists along the way that I did not think about. And sometimes, I think especially because I kind of had created another world for my book, it's fantasy, some things don't make sense. You know, as you're writing, you think in your head at the beginning, okay, this is how it's gonna go, but then it doesn't turn out that way. And there were some moments that I kind of panicked, like I had reached the middle of my book and some things weren't making sense. And I had to actually step away from the book for a while because I needed time to like have a fresh perspective and think up a different way that things could be. So that can be scary too. That's something that I'm sure a lot of authors experience. It just doesn't go the way you want. So that's kind of like my writing process. And as I said, I am writing several books now. One of them is a fiction novel. So I'm going about that book in kind of the same way. Just I have a general idea and then I just kind of go for it. Also writing a nonfiction book that's geared towards students in college who are Christian and like kind of going through a day in the life of how to keep faith alive with you and kind of get through those college struggles. So that's something I'm working on as well. I'm also working on a children's book, and actually I'm working on a collection of short stories that probably will not come out for years because just kind of whenever I get an idea, I jot it down. So I'm working on several different things, and it's interesting because with my first book, Crossing Worlds, that was the only thing I was working on. And it still took me 3 years from kind of like moment of idea, like moment of conception, to finished product. And I'll kind of go into that too, and I'll tell you how I'm doing it differently this time. So when I was writing Crossing Worlds, as I mentioned, I was in grad school. I came up with the idea one semester in, it was Christmas break, and I still had another 2 full years of grad school left. So while I was in grad school, I was obviously going to class, you know, for like 10 hours a week, actually probably like 15 hours a week, kind of sucked. And I was working full time, and I also had homework, you know, a lot of papers to write, a lot of tests to study for, and I traveled for one of those years too, about like 40 minutes each way. So my days were filled. They were long days. And so it was not the type of situation where I could write every day. Even if I did have time, a lot of times I was like mentally exhausted. And I always told myself that I didn't want to force myself to write. I wanted it to be a fun thing, because if I forced myself to write a certain amount every day, then it would become like a chore, and I probably would not be able to write as well, honestly. I think there was a period of about almost 3 months where I did not write a single word. Partly because I was like in the middle of the book and I had gotten kind of stuck and I needed to step away. And I was just really busy and it just wasn't my priority at that time. So I would say writing the manuscript from start to finish was probably about 2 years. It took me to write the full thing. So after I finished writing that, I printed it out. I printed out everything. It was like 200 some pages, like on Microsoft Word. And I gave it to my husband and I gave it to my mom, and I had them read it and I had them go through, and my mom especially is like very good at editing, and I had them just kind of edit it and say anything that they thought could be improved, like where it needed more description, things like that. And they were both very honest with me, and I appreciate that. And they were able to give me some changes to make. Thankfully not like massive changes. I don't know if I could have handled that. But I made the changes, and then I actually sent it off to another woman who was a friend of the family, and she actually like reviews books for a living, reviews books to see if they should be published. And so I sent it to her because I knew she would be honest with me. That's her job. And she read my book and she gave me like a page of notes, things that I could fix up. But what really made me feel good was the fact that at the end of it, she said, you know, this is a book that I would recommend to be published. And I was like, oh, thank God, you know, because as a creator in any way, like whether it's like a painting or a book or even like a YouTube video, you just have this massive fear that people are not going to like it, that it's not good. And it's hard to put yourself out there like that. And I think that too was a big reason why I didn't start writing seriously until I was in grad school, because I just never had enough confidence before that to put anything out there that I had written. I was just too afraid that people wouldn't like it and they would think it wasn't good. And don't get me wrong, that's like still a major fear of mine, but I have gotten enough bravery, I guess, to just like put it out there and hope for the best. So after my mom and my husband and the family friend went through the book and gave me edits, I went ahead and made those edits, and then I actually did send it off to probably like 6 or 7 different agents. And I have to tell you, like, that's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would just be like, oh, here's my manuscript, like, read it, let me know if you want to be my agent, and yay, book deal, love it. There's a lot more than that. You have to basically do almost like a job application, but like much, much more detail. And one of the things that really discouraged me was that a lot of these agents asked about my social media following. So they would say, what social media platforms do you have and how many followers do you have? And that's something that is very, very disappointing to me in this current world, that, no hate, but if you are famous in some way, you're just more likely to get your book published, even if it's not that great. And that really freaking sucks. Because if you're just an average gal like me, like, I have a very normal amount of followers. I don't have thousands of followers. I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time, so I couldn't even say that I was doing this. So I didn't get picked up by any agents. And that was a big knock in my confidence, because I always thought for the longest time, I just had the idea in my head that if an agent didn't want my book and they weren't willing to kind of like take a chance on me and send it out to different publishers, then it just must mean that it's not good. And so I really debated with myself after all this work, after years of work, what I should do. And it sucked because you put all this time in, like I can't even count the amount of hours, like hundreds and hundreds of hours of work putting this book together. And I was like, well, it's not gonna get published, so sucks for me. And then I started looking more into self-publishing, which I had always kind of thought, like, technically anybody can self-publish. Like, even if you wrote a big pile of crap, like, you could publish that. You could publish whatever you want. So I had always kind of like looked down on self-publishing in a way. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that for me, for my situation, it might be a good thing, and that even if it wasn't gonna be in bookstores, you know, it could still be a good thing to do. And I did all the work, so why not have it in print? So there are several different self-publishing sites that you can use. I decided on Amazon because we love Amazon, and I am not a very tech-savvy person, and I found that Amazon's publishing platform was very easy to use. They kind of just like prompt you to upload all these different things. So of course you have to upload your manuscript. You also have to kind of create like that paragraph blurb that's usually on the back of books. So I had to create that, and like an author profile and all these different things. And of course you have to have cover art. You can kind of hire like Amazon people to do cover for you, but I do know someone who's a graphic designer, so I had her do that, and she created a cover for me that I was very, very happy with. And I was able to just kind of upload that. And then there's like some other things. I won't go that into it, one, because it's like pretty self-explanatory once you're in there, and because I don't want to make this video about like how to publish on Amazon. But once you like have everything that they need, it really is just as simple as uploading the different documents and putting in different information. You do get to choose how much you want to sell your book for, and you can like change that price at any time. So if you want to put your book on sale for the holidays or something like that, like you can always do that. So yeah, then once I filled in all that information on the Amazon publishing site, I submitted it, and I just had to wait like a day, I think, and then it was live. And I was freaking out. I was so scared for people to read it. And I just kind of put it out there like, hey, I wrote a book, like pretty crazy, right? And a lot of people didn't even know that I was writing one, because, you know, I always had that fear, what if I don't finish it? What if it's no good? Whatever, whatever, whatever. So only like the people closest to me even knew that I was writing it. So a lot of people were pretty surprised. And I'm very grateful that a lot of people did support me in buying the book. And I'll show you, I've got it right here. Here she is. Isn't that cover just absolutely gorgeous? I love it. Crossing Worlds is the name of this book. And I do have the little blurb on the back. So if you would love to support me and buy my book, you can find it on Amazon. It is $12. And just as kind of like a fun little giveaway, I thought that if you are subscribed to me and you leave a comment on this video and you follow me on Instagram, yeah, that sounds good, you will be entered into a giveaway you will win a signed copy of my book, and I'll also include some other little goodies, just like a fun little thing. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything, I guess. I will add too that my writing process for my books that I'm working on now is a little bit different because I have a lot more time and I am working on several books at once. So my goal is to have my next fiction book out by fall. We'll be publishing that through Amazon as well. The book that I'm writing, that's like the Christian book for college students, I am actually going to see if a Christian publisher will publish that one. So if that does happen, it will probably not be out until like the end of next year. If that doesn't, I'll probably release that one hopefully by like Christmas time this year. My book of short stories is kind of a continuous process, so that probably wouldn't be released at least until maybe like the end of next year, maybe even the year after, depending on like how big I want that book to be. And my children's book, I definitely want to have finished by next spring. So I have a lot of things planned. It's super exciting. And since I am working on all of them at once, it's kind of fun because I try to force myself to write at least a little bit every day, or else you're never going to get anywhere. But I can kind of choose like, oh, do I feel like working on my fiction book, or do I feel like working on my nonfiction, whatever. So it's kind of nice to have a few different projects. I hope that answered any questions you might have. I will keep most of my book talk mainly to Instagram, like I'll do Instagram lives maybe? I don't know. Or I'll just do like question and answers on there. Hopefully this wasn't too scatterbrained, and if you want a copy of my book and some other fun little things, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and follow me on Instagram. I think that's what I said earlier. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and if you like this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. I make new videos every Friday and Monday. I will see you next time. Bye!